John Milton was born to Puritan parents in 1608, 5 years after the death of Queen Elizabeth I, Spenser's Faerie Queen. His father was a composer, and Milton grew up living in the shadow of Old St. Paul's Cathedral. At the time, London was turning into a world imperial commercial center. He attended Cambridge like Spenser, but with a more prosperous background, he continued in private study, extensively learning classical literature, hence his Latinate style of using complex sentence structure. Disillusioned with the state church, Milton sought to become a poet and journalist instead of a clergyman, which was his original career path. In 1638, he toured Europe and met notables such as Galileo, conferring with other learned men and touring libraries such as the Vatican's. Milton fed his interest in geography as well. Gordon Teskey notes, "The complex physical reality of the earth is everywhere apparent in Paradise Lost and is equaled by no other great poet." In Italy, Milton stayed briefly with the patron of the poet Tasso, a Renaissance Christian writer of epic and one of the inspirers of Spenser's Faerie Queen. Milton himself was inspired in his ambition to write an epic, perhaps following Spenser, to write about King Arthur. But Milton's sense of the oppressiveness of the Catholic Counter-Reformation in Italy, combined with his enjoyment of his stay in Protestant Geneva, to confirm his sectarian role as a Protestant writer. Milton cut short his European travels to return to England to aid the cause of revolution. In his writings, he justified the execution of King Charles I in 1649, and he became the secretary and chief translator to the revolutionary Puritan government. But he later became disillusioned with it, as the revolution proved in some ways even more tyrannical than the old monarchy. During the period of this political upheaval, Milton in 1652 became blind. This was also the year of the death of his first wife, with whom he had had a tumultuous relationship, leading him to be an advocate for legal divorce. As Teskey notes, thus it was that by the middle of 1652, little more than a decade after returning to England young, brilliant, ardently idealist, and hopeful, and with the best education possible at that time, and equal to the best at any time, Milton found himself widowed and blind, with 3 daughters to raise, the oldest of whom was 6. Yet Milton remarried in 1656, and upon Cromwell's death in 1658, the Puritan Commonwealth fell apart. The impoverished Milton began writing Paradise Lost that same year, 1658, which also was the year that his second wife died. He hit another low point again in 1659, when he was imprisoned for 2 months for writing against the idea of a state-established church during the restoration of the monarchy. He worked on Paradise Lost until he finished it in 1664, having married the 3rd time the year before its completion. The poem was published in its first version in 1667. He published its sequel, Paradise Regained, in 1671. Both were a great success. Milton died in 1674, the year in which the second edition of Paradise Lost appeared, reorganized into its current form in 12 books. Milton wrote the poem at a time when modern science was developing, and the poem's view of nature as daughter of chaos and night is quite different from Spenser's view of nature in the Mutability cantos as symbolizing the divine. Nature is turning away from being the essence of things in a pre-modern sense to being an object of human scientific study. The bower of bliss here has become natural. Yet, as Ken Hiltner notes in his book, Milton and Ecology, in our readings, Milton's poem nonetheless resists the growing placelessness of the modern Western Cartesian sense of nature. Paradise is a place that for Milton was firmly anchored in marriage, and marriage's symbolism of ecosemiotic engagement and entanglement with the other and larger communicative contexts, rather than a satanic differentiation of self. Satan is so appealing in many ways because he is a modern individual, but that is why, arguably, he is also so incredibly destructive of the environment, first in hell and then on earth.